Well, we're going to hit Daniel chapter 4 this morning. I told you a week or two ago that I wouldn't be surprised to see Nebuchadnezzar in heaven. And it's because of this chapter. He actually wrote this. We'll just get started. Daniel chapter 4, verse 1. It says, Nebuchadnezzar the king, unto all people, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied unto you. And, back then, the viewpoint of the earth was a lot smaller than it is today, but still, he was king of the known world. So that went out through his whole kingdom. It says, I thought it good to show the signs and wonders that the high God hath wrought toward me. How great are his signs, how mighty are his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion is from generation to generation. He learned something in this chapter. Everlasting. That's pretty good. But because of that phrase there, and toward the end of the chapter, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him in heaven. He has to learn a lesson here. But we'll go on. It says, I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at rest in mine house, and flourishing in my palace. I saw a dream which made me afraid, and the thoughts upon my bed and the visions of my head troubled me. Therefore made I a decree to bring in all the wise men of Babylon before me. And there's only wise men in Babylon because Daniel saved their bacon. It was a decree to kill them all. But, it was God helping Daniel. But they might make known unto me the interpretation of the dream. Then came in the magicians, the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers, and I told the dream before them, but they did not make known unto me the interpretation thereof. I like this right here. It says, but at the last Daniel came in before me, whose name was Belteshazzar, according to the name of my God. So he started calling him Daniel now. Right? According to the name of my God, and in whom is the spirit of the holy gods, and before him I told the dream, saying, O Belteshazzar, and I think that he uses the name Belteshazzar here so that all of the nation that's under him doesn't get confused, because they may not know who Daniel is. But that's just my thoughts on that. O Belteshazzar, master of the magicians. So he has been elevated to a point that he's over all the magicians. And the magicians here is not how we think of magicians. Magicians here is where the word magi came from. When we read about the wise men traveling to see Christ, they were magi. They were educated people, smart men. Because I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in thee, and no secret troubleth thee. Tell me the visions of my dream that I have seen, and the interpretation thereof. Thus were the visions of mine head in my bed. I saw and behold a tree in the midst of the earth, and the height thereof was great. And a lot of times in the Bible, men are compared to trees. The tree grew and was strong, and the height thereof reached unto heaven, and the sight thereof to the end of all the earth. The leaves thereof were fair, and the fruit thereof much, and in it was meat for all. The beasts of the field had shadow under it, and the fowls of the heaven dwelt in the boughs thereof, and all the flesh was fed of it. And I saw in the visions of my head upon my bed, and behold, a watcher and a holy one came down from heaven. And watchers are mentioned a few times in the Bible. A watcher is an angel. There's several interpretations. If you go to Genesis 6, that group of angels was of watchers that shed their ocaterion. We talked about that a little bit. A holy one, according to the Strong's, is a saint. So a watcher and a holy one came down from heaven, and sometimes a watcher is referred to as a guardian angel. he cried aloud and said thus, Hew down the tree, and cut off his branches, shake off his leaves, and scatter his fruit. Let the beasts get away from under it, and the fowls from his branches. Nevertheless, leave the stump of his roots in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass, in the tender grass of the field, and let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beasts in the grass of the earth. Let his heart be changed from man's, and let a beast's heart be given unto him, and let 7 times pass over him. So that's 7 years. This matter, and we'll get more into 7 years as we get into Daniel. This matter is by the decree of the watchers, and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will, and setteth up over it the basest of men. This dream I, King Nebuchadnezzar, have seen. Now, thou, O Belteshazzar, declare the interpretation thereof, forasmuch as all the wise men of my kingdom are not able to make known unto me the interpretation, but thou art able, for the spirit of the holy gods is in thee. Then Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, was astonied for 1 hour, and his thoughts troubled him. Now, astonied, according to the Strongs, that means appalled or stunned. There's times in our life that God has us interact with people and tell them things that we really don't want to tell them. You know? You're saying, are you sure, Lord? Well, he's sure. And I think that Daniel had a really close relationship with the king, as close as a king and a subject could have. I think he had a soft spot in his heart for Nebuchadnezzar. And as you read on through here, you kind of get that feel a little bit. So, you know, he knows God's already giving him the interpretation, and he's sitting here thinking, man, I don't know how I'm going to break this to him. But here we go. It says, the king spake and said, Belteshazzar, let not the dream or the interpretation thereof trouble thee. Belteshazzar answered and said, my lord, the dream be to them that hate thee, and the interpretation thereof to thine enemies. So it's not going to turn out, it's not looking good for Belteshazzar. The tree that thou sawest, which grew and was strong, whose height reached unto the heaven, and the sight thereof to all the earth. Let's see here. Page turn. And the fruit thereof much, and in it was the meat for all, under which the beasts of the field dwelt, and upon whose branches the fowls of the heaven had their habitation. It is thou, O king. Thou art grown and become strong, for thy greatness is grown and reacheth unto heaven, and thy dominion to the end of the earth. And whereas the king saw a watcher and a holy one coming down from heaven and saying, hew thee the tree down and destroy it, yet leave the stump of the roots thereof in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass, in the tender grass of the field, and let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his, it changes from a tree to a person, and let his portion be with the beasts of the field till 7 times pass over him. So this interpretation is for a man. This is the interpretation, O king, and this is the decree of the Most High, which has come upon my lord the king, that they shall drive thee from men, and thy dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, and they shall make thee to eat grass as oxen, and they shall wet thee with the dew of heaven, and 7 times shall pass over thee, till thou know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will. And whereas thou commanded to leave the stump of the tree roots, thy kingdom shall be sure unto thee, After that thou shalt have known that the heavens do rule. Wherefore, O king, let my counsel be acceptable unto thee. So he's giving the king some advice here. And break off thy sins by righteousness, and thine iniquities by showing mercy to the poor, if it may be a lengthening of thy tranquility. So he's giving him some advice here that he might be able to get out of this. Verse 28. And all this came upon King Nebuchadnezzar. He didn't listen. And at the end of 12 months, so a year later, he walked in the palace of the kingdom of Babylon. The king spake and said, Is this not great Babylon that I have built for the house of the kingdom by the might of my power and for the honor of my majesty? But now, Babylon was impressive. You know, the walls around the city of Babylon, according to what we can find, it was 15 miles square, the walls. 15 miles square. The walls were 350 feet high. When you think about this, this is no machinery. 350 feet high, 87 feet wide. The river Euphrates ran through the middle of the city. And they used it to irrigate the hanging gardens. It did a lot of things. Saddam Hussein started rebuilding Babylon, and we'll get into more in that into there. And he offered some crazy bounty if somebody could figure out how they irrigated the hanging gardens from the river Euphrates. It was $10 million or something. I don't remember. But anyway, they could race 6 chariots around the top of this wall at 6 wide. This was an impressive thing. Nimrod actually built the first part of the city, the Tower of Babel and all that. And I had a little map I should have brought that kind of shows you the city and some of the landmarks and all that. But anyway, when they were excavating Babylon, they found an inscription carved into I think it was the wall, but I'm not sure. It says, I, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, I am the son of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. I who erected the Azida temple, I who built Procession Street, the street of the forgiven sun, the street of Nebu, and paved it with shining stones. Nebu, that was one of his gods. You, the divine minister, grant me immortality. We talked about that a few weeks ago. God hates pride. Let's go over into Proverbs. I wasn't going to go this way, but I could not help it. So let's see. Proverbs will start in chapter 6, I think. Yep, 6 and 16 through 19. Says, These 6 things doeth the Lord hate, yea, 7 are an abomination unto him. A proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that deviseth wicked imaginations, feet that be swift into running to mischief, a false witness that speaketh lies, and he that soweth discord among the brethren. I'd say at some point in here, I fell into a lot of these categories. Not all of them, but some of them. We'll just hang out in Proverbs a minute. Proverbs chapter 16, I believe it is. There we go. Verse 5 says, Everyone that is proud in heart is an abomination to the Lord. Though hand joined in hand, he shall not be unpunished. And I'm just hitting some of the prides. 16 and 18, I believe. Yep. Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Proverbs 26. Verse 12. Seest thou a man wise in his own conceit? There is more hope of a fool than of him. Proverbs 29. Verse 23. A man's pride shall bring him low, but honor shall uphold the humble in spirit. Getting a little bit of light here. Let's see here. James. I believe we'll go there next. Now, James may be one of my favorites, the whole book, because James is blunt and to the point. He just tells you how it is. We'll hit James chapter 4, verses 13 through 17. It says, Go to now, ye that say, Today or tomorrow we will go into such a city and continue there a year, and buy and sell and get gain. Whereas ye know not what shall be on the morrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away. For that ye ought to say, If the Lord will, we shall live and do this or that. But now ye rejoice in your boastings. All such rejoicing is evil. Therefore to him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin. How many times do we make plans and don't consult the Lord? You know? Guilty. I'd get all of them up if I could. I mean, I don't know that I'm capable of making a good decision without consulting the Lord, because I've made enough bad ones where I didn't. You know? I'm just saying. Let's see here. Let's go over to 1 Peter. Just the next book over. Chapter 5. And we'll start at verse 5. Good advice. Likewise, ye younger, submit yourselves unto the elder. It don't matter if they're wrong or not. Submit yourself and then we'll work it out. Well, I don't know about all that I've done very well there. Ye all of you should be subject one to another and be clothed with humility. For God resisteth the proud and giveth grace to the humble. Humble yourselves therefore under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time, casting all your care upon him before he careth for you. Let's go back to verse 5 where it says, God resisteth. That, I looked that up, and it kind of surprised me what the definition was. It means to range in battle against. God is setting himself up as opposition to the proud. Now, how many times have I probably ran into that opposition? Yeah. So it's kind of showing me here, well, let's go to another one here. I believe it was Philippians. Chapter 2. I'm sorry. Philippians chapter 2, verses 1 through 8. Got that variable speed fans going. We'll get there. If there be therefore any consolation in Christ, if any comfort of love, if any fellowship of the Spirit, if any bowels and mercies. I like that word mercy, and I like it over there in Matthew where it says the merciful shall obtain mercy. I like that. Fulfill ye my joy, that ye be like-minded, having the same love, being of one accord and of one mind. Let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind. Let each esteem other better than themselves. Look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, and took upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men. And being found in a fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. Wherefore God also hath highly exalted him, and given him a name which is above every name. And we could go on, but we'll stop right there. God resisteth the proud. But we see a little bit of lessons here. You know, obviously pride comes about pretty naturally for mankind, or it wouldn't be warning so much against it. But humbleness is the cure for that. But we have to work on being humble, or I do. I don't know about y'all, but I do. What's it say? Every man's right in his own eyes. You know. Go ahead, brother. Yeah. But, you know, the reason that the Lord hates pride so bad is we go all the way back to the fall of Satan. We don't have much on that, and we're not going to read it, but it's Isaiah chapter 14. Read that. That's all them eyes I told you about. And Ezekiel chapter 28. That's a really good one. That gives us a picture of our enemy. He would love for us to fall in the same category as him. I mean, it's not that he likes us. He doesn't want us around him, but he don't want us with God either. And I told Vanessa this, and I don't know if I told y'all this, several years ago. I was reading some stuff, and it was in the Apocrypha. It's not in our book. But it's in Jewish history, and I believe it was the book of Bartholomew, but it's been a while. He asked some of the angels. It was Michael, Gabriel, and another one I don't remember. And it kind of puts it in perspective, though, whether it's here or not. He said, why doesn't Satan do what he is supposed to do? They said, we'll go get him and you can ask him. So and I'm paraphrasing because it's written in the old language and it's hard to, but anyway, a legion of angels brought Satan bound in his dragon form. And they said, go ask him. He said, I'm not going over there. He said, because it must have been terrifying to behold. He said, I'll go ask him. He ain't going to do nothing. So he went over there and said, why don't you do what God would have you to do? He said, I was made first. I was made from fire. I have power, and I'm not worshiping a piece of dirt. Basically. So that kind of puts it in perspective. Our enemy hates us, hates anything to do with God, hates us with a hatred that we can't fathom. This is an old hate, you know, and he's been given some power to range against us. So be careful in pride. Be very, very careful in pride. I'm talking to me as much as I am anybody. Let's go back to Daniel. Let's see here. Okay, verse 30. The king spake and said, is not this great Babylon that I have built for the house of the kingdom by the might of my power and for the honor of my majesty? While the word was in the king's mouth, there fell a voice from heaven saying, O King Nebuchadnezzar, to thee it is spoken. The kingdom is departed from thee. It don't say thy kingdom, it says the kingdom. All right? And they shall drive thee from men, and thy dwelling shall be as the beast with the beasts of the field. They shall make thee to eat grass as oxen, and 7 times shall pass over thee, until thou know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will. You got to figure this man is in the field for 7 years. 7 years. We can't wait 7 minutes But 7 years. The same hour was the thing fulfilled upon Nebuchadnezzar. He was driven from men, and did eat grass as oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till his hairs were like eagle's feathers, and his nails like birds' claws. And at the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted up mine eyes unto heaven, and my understanding returned unto me. He has learned his lesson. And I blessed the Most High. Now, you figure, if we have to suffer for a little while, we're thinking, Lord, is this ever going to be over? 7 years, this man ate grass. No steak, no sausage. Man. 7 years. And I blessed the Most High, and I praised and honored him that liveth forever, whose dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation. And all the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing. And he doeth according to his will in the army of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth. And none can stay his hand or say unto him, What doest thou? I believe Job learned that lesson pretty quick. Job going through that trial, and he's whining a little bit and asking God some questions, and God comes to him in a whirlwind and asks him, I think it's 200 and some questions. Where was you when I laid the foundations of the world? Where was you when I did this? Where was you when I did that? Job finally is like, okay, Lord, I'm nothing. I understand. At the same time, my reason returned unto me, and for the glory of my kingdom, mine honor and brightness returned unto me, and my counselors and my Lord sought unto me. And I was established in my kingdom, and excellent majesty was added unto me. So during this time, his kingdom was looked for. It was kept for him. God worked that out. So that when he came to his senses and learned his lesson, he's been restored. But I was established in my kingdom, and excellent majesty was added unto me. So he gained something. Okay? So hopefully when we're learning our lesson, we gain something. We learn something, gain something on the other side. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor to the King of heaven, all whose works are truth, and his ways judgment, and those that walk in pride, he is able to abase. I mean, I love that. So the next time we meet, we're going to be in Daniel chapter 5. And I want you to do a little homework, because this will help you with some things, I believe, as we go forward in Daniel. The fall of Babylon is not to be confused with the doom of Babylon that's prophesied, okay? And we'll get into that too. I believe, according to these scriptures, in the last days, Babylon is going to be a great place again, okay? And we'll get into some of the scripture that talks about that, but read Isaiah chapter 13 and 14. And I mean, just read them, and I'm not trying to say figure it all out. Just read them so it kind of gets your mind there. Jeremiah chapter 50 and 51. And Revelation chapter 17 and 18. And I think as we go forward, that'll help some of this line up. And we'll see some things, because like I was saying, Saddam Hussein restored some of Babylon, and we're going to read about the same room that's in chapter 5 is the same room that he gave some of his addresses out of. It's the same banquet hall that it's been restored. Isaiah chapter 13 and 14, Jeremiah chapter 50 and 51, and Revelation chapter 17 and 18. And that'll help get our minds kind of toward that. And I guess we're out of time, and we'll take a little break and